constant, or the government can choose to adjust only the G by keeping T constant, or the government can choose to adjust both components. So that's why they call it as an option. So definition, what is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy refers to the action taken by the government to change the G, the level of the government expenditure, as well as the taxation, government revenue. This is what government revenue. Tax is the main government revenue, all right. So but here for the case of fiscal policy, we call it as what? Tax in order to manage the total demand in the country as well, which influence the economic activities in the country, which is why. So a policy instruments or option, the government can either choose to adjust government expenditure by keeping tax constant, or the other way around is adjusting the tax by keeping government expenditure constant, or the government can choose to adjust both T and G. Alright, both T and G. This is what we call fiscal policy. The moment the government adjusting T or G or both, so it means the government is implementing a fiscal policy. So the relationship between the fiscal policy, full employment, and economic growth. Alright, so how are they related? So before we go into this part, subtopic, I would like to explain to you about introduce to you about the two important types of the fiscal policy. We have expansionary fiscal policy as well as the contractionary fiscal policy. So expansionary fiscal policy can be implemented by the government by decreasing the T. I repeat, by decreasing the T, as well as what? Increasing the government expenditure. By cutting down the T, at the same time raising the G, is what we call the government is implementing the expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, this is purposely to increase the level of income, national output, employment, and the growth, economic growth in the country. So if the government increases government expenditure as well as decreases tax, it means the government is implementing expansionary fiscal policy in order to what? Raise level of income, level of employment, as well as the economic growth in the country. Okay, so how it works? So how to analyze this is, you see, as let's say the government decreases the tax and choose to keep government expenditure constant. Okay, that means the government is trying to cut down tax in the country. So what will happen is, the moment the government implementing a tax cut, okay, you can see tax will affect the consumers or household sectors disposable income. Okay, because disposable income means income after tax. Okay, a tax cut will increase the disposable income, therefore people will have more money to spend. Okay, because they only need to pay little bit of tax. All right, now as the household sector, or as the consumers have more money to spend, so this will increase the level of consumption in the country, the total consumption in the country. Okay, so the total consumption in the country will increase. As the consumption increases, the total demand for goods and services will increase. The AD will increase. As AD increases, this will directly, as the AD increases, the Y increases, the national output increases. As the national output increases, the level of employment increases, because there is an AD increase in the aggregate demand. Okay, the demand for goods and services are higher now, therefore more jobs, okay, more jobs will be created, more opportunities are out there, therefore this will increase the level of employment, production, right, as well as the economic growth. Okay, so the other case is the government expenditure. When the government choose to increase the government expenditure, means also the government is trying to implement the expansionary fiscal policy. As you can see the formula, aggregate demand is equals to C plus I plus G X minus M. I repeat, the formula for the aggregate demand is what? AD equals to C means consumption, I plus I means investment, plus G means the government expenditure, plus net exports, export minus import. Okay, net exports, the external sector, right? So you can see the when the government increases the government expenditure, the AD will increase because the AD is equals to C plus I plus G plus net exports. So as the government expenditure, as the G increases, the AD increases. As the AD increases, the Y increases. As the Y increases, the level of employment rises. Okay, so the government's act, okay, towards cutting down the tax or raising the G means the government is trying to implement expansionary fiscal policy. Next, the case of the reverse case of the expansionary fiscal policy, okay, is the contractionary fiscal policy. Contractionary fiscal policy is the total opposite of the expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, in expansionary fiscal policy, the government will reduce tax and increase the government expenditure. But in the contractionary fiscal policy, the government will what? The government will increase the tax and decrease the government expenditure. So this one we can use a diagram to explain. If you take a look at this diagram here, you can see there's a case of what? Decrease in the AD. The government is trying to reduce the AD from AD0 to AD1. Okay, this is simply to what? Reduce the level of economic activities in the country, purposely to bring down the price level, because you can see the gap between the P2 and P1 is too wide, too large, where the country is currently facing an inflationary pressure. Okay, you can see that the price P2 is too far away. Okay, so because the initial equilibrium is at the point A, when the AD0 cuts the AS, okay, at the full employment level, where there's no way for the country to increase the supply anymore, because all the resources has been fully employed. There's no more extra resources in the economy, therefore there's no way for the government to increase the supply. But however, the AD is too high, where causing inflationary pressure in the economy. So in order to reduce the inflationary pressure in the economy, the government must find their way to bring down the aggregate demand. So in order to bring down the aggregate demand, the government will what? Will implement the contractionary fiscal policy, where the contractionary fiscal policy can be implemented by raising the tax and decreasing the government expenditure. As the government increases the tax, this will decrease the disposable income of household sector. As the disposable income decreases, the level of consumption will fall. This will reduce the AD. Okay, as the consumption drops, AD drops. You can see therefore the AD curve from AD0 will shift to AD1, will cause the price level to the general price level to drop from P2 to lower, where this reduces the inflationary pressure in the economy. Next, the fiscal measure and the budget. Okay, fiscal measures, we have expansionary fiscal policy and the contractionary fiscal policy. I repeat, expansionary fiscal policy means cutting down tax and also increasing the government expenditure. So in this case, we can clearly see that the government revenue is greater than the government expenditure is greater than the government revenue, which will cause to what? Which will cause to budget deficit or deficit budget. Okay, deficit budget, because the T is lesser than the G. T means the government revenue. The government revenue is lesser than the government expenditure, will cause the negative BB, negative budget balance. Okay, negative budget balance will cause a deficit budget. Whereas a contractionary fiscal policy will cause a surplus budget, because contractionary fiscal policy means a rise in the tax and also a drop in the government expenditure. Therefore, we can say that T greater than the G. T is the major contributor to the government revenue. Therefore, the GR greater than the GE. Okay, so this means there's a surplus budget. There's a surplus budget or surplus budget balance, right? Surplus budget balance. So you can see, so the purpose for the government to implement expansionary or contractionary fiscal policies also to adjust the budget, the government's budget. You can see whenever the government faces a budget deficit, the government can choose to implement the contractionary fiscal policy in order to narrow down the budget deficit. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching.